Hello, this is Emily, president of Self-Advocates of ADEC and podcast host. Welcome to another episode of our monthly podcast, Expert Tips by ADEC Self-Advocates. And welcome back to Expert Tips by ADEC Self-Advocates, our July podcast. Today, guess what? I'm not going to be the host today because today's host, we got Cassidy.
Hi, Emily. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Well, so since we've just celebrated the 4th of July, the 4th of July is all about independence. And so that is going to be our main focus for today's podcast, is talking about choices and possibilities and independence. So like Emily previously mentioned, we are going to switch things up from the usual podcast. And today I am going to be asking Emily a lot of the questions to get her expert opinion. So I want to start off by saying, since we're talking about independence, what does independence mean to you?
I think it's interesting, actually, the broad term that is independence. It's not just based on one person's thought process on how they think independence is. I think it's interesting that we celebrate America and associate it with a war, but because of the soldiers, we wouldn't have a lot of the freedoms and the rights that we have now. We have a lot more independence now because of the fallen soldiers that died in that war.
Absolutely. And we gained our independence. And so I think that's really the highlight of the 4th of July, is celebrating that and the soldiers and the freedom that we gained. How do you have independence in your everyday life? What ways are you independent?
I have a chance to say what's on my mind, and I have a choice to be able to say what's on my mind, be able to say anything, really. Well, it depends, really.
Yeah.
As long as they're not hurting others purposely, I can say what's on my mind. I can express myself because unfortunately not everyone has that choice either.
Yeah, and I think something really important that you shared is the word choice. I think choice lines up with independence a lot, just being able to make your own choices and to be offered choices versus being told what to do. I think that allows for, I think independence can stem from there a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I also like the idea. There's a description in being like a radical or being a maverick in a way, kind of like standing alone in your own independence.
Did you ever have challenges? Did you ever face challenges becoming independent and feeling like you had your own independence?
I'm not really sure. Growing up, well, I'll just say this. I had a lot of choices. I had a lot of life well lived. I could choose what classes I wanted by the time I got into high school. For electives, I was able to do that for middle school. I was able to choose what subjects I liked even when I was in elementary school. I was offered a lot of choice growing up.
That's good to hear. And through ADEC, you're a part of ADEC Self-Advocates. What is your role with that?
I'm the president of our advocacy group.
That's awesome. How long have you been the president?
Um, I don't really remember. I think it's been a year or almost 2 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool that you kind of get to oversee the group as a whole, right? Being the president.
Mhm.
Do you think being a part of that group has helped you gain more independence or learn anything about being independent?
Especially more so, like, when I first started out in 2015 being in just starting going into ADEC, I felt like my identity became more blossomed, and I really started to figure out who I really am and how I felt about my disability.
For individuals with disabilities that maybe don't feel like they have that choice or independence, what would you say is a way that they could advocate for themselves?
If I could say anything about the situation, is that you have a chance to say no. Believe it or not, you really do have a choice, even if it seems like you don't.
Yeah, and I think people that are struggling to feel like they have their own independence, I think a good way to help them advocate for themselves is reminding them that they have those choices and to remind those around them that they should be given choices as well. Because I think choice and possibility are really the root of what independence is and where that comes from. And so reminding both the individual and those around them
Mhm.
just how important that is as well. I know you brought up school and being able to choose your own classes, and you go to our skills training program and you get to choose what activities you want to work on and what possible employment you want to go into. And so being provided with those choices, does that make you feel more independent overall?
Yes. It's interesting how far my journey has been since I first started going into this program. Like in 2015, I didn't always start at the hub. I started at the Shoots building. I helped design the shirt at the shoots that you would see where a lot of the clients wear actually. It's a blue shirt with like a superhero and it takes the dis out of disability.
That's awesome. And you helped design it?
Yeah.
That's
Mm,
really cool.
yeah, that front logo, my idea.
That's awesome.
Mm.
What what personal goals for yourself do you have for the future in terms of just independence or employment or any goals you have for yourself?
One of these days, and I know it seems like a dream or maybe a fantasy, but like one of these days, I really want to work in the entertainment industry somehow.
How so? Is there something particular in entertainment you want to get into?
Um, like screenwriting.
That's awesome. Do you have any plans or anything you could do to help you meet those goals that you can think of?
Mm. Well, I do have a lot of experience with writing in general. I have a blog that's not really a professional blog, but I like to write. I like to blog. I've been doing the newspaper for a really long time, and when I was in school,
That's awesome.
yeah, back then it was known as a tomahawk.
Well, that sounds like those outlets that you shared, it sounds like that gives you opportunities and chances to practice your writing to hopefully down the line help meet your goal, right?
Yeah,
Tell me a little bit, you mentioned your blog. Tell me a little bit about your blog.
I'll admit I just realized I don't really talk about my blog a whole lot.
Yeah, what do you write about on there?
Um, a lot of stuff. Um, For instance, the blog's actually 18 plus for mature audiences only
Okay.
because I talk about mature topics on there as well.
Mhm.
Like I talk about world issues, I talk about politics. I but a lot of the time I talk about what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling or what I'm doing at the time.
That's awesome, Emily. And I feel like that's a really cool way for you to express yourself in that kind of manner. That's a really cool way, like an outlet to talk about, your choices on certain topics or situations. And so I feel like that ties right into one of the ways that you're very independent.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Is there anything else you want to share about your journey towards independence? I think so far, just since we've been talking, I have heard from you that over time you seem to continue to grow within your independence. Is there anything you want to share about that journey and growth for the independence?
When I was younger, I was so much less confident in myself, less sure of myself. And, well, I was also very less confident in my disability. I tend to hyperfixate on a lot of things, and that's like thinking about dwelling on a certain thing for too long. And for me at that time, it was my disability. And
Yeah.
I forgot that if you take the dis out of disability, there's still an ability.
Absolutely. And this month, within the month of July, is actually Disability Independence Awareness Day, which I think is really cool to kind of bring up while we're talking about this in the podcast because whether it's Disability Independence Awareness Day or just Independence Awareness Day, I think it's really important for all people to make sure that they have choices and options to help them feel independent. Do you have any advice for anybody struggling maybe finding independence? I know you personally have felt like you've had choices throughout your life to help you gain that independence, but for someone that maybe isn't given those choices, do you have any advice?
For people who feel less like sure of themselves, for people who don't really have much choices in a lot of things, just the idea of thinking about wanting to take that choice, that risk, I I get it. I get it. It's scary.
Yeah, it can definitely be scary.
But let me tell you, you may never know what that choice may lead. And it might lead to something that you might really, really enjoy.
Absolutely. Do you think the family and friends and people's support systems, do you think that can those people can help a person gain independence as well?
Well, yes, actually, it depends on who you surround yourself with. Unfortunately, if there's people that hold you back, that don't give you that choice, the people that are hurting you, maybe those are not the people to be around.
Yeah, it's important to recognize that every choice you make has an impact, whether good or bad. And so trying to make the best choices for yourself can be really beneficial in finding yourself, finding your independence, working towards your goals, just striving to live the life that you want to live.
Exactly. Thank you for listening to Expertise by ADEC Self-Advocates. Thank you, Cassidy.
Yes, thank you for having me, and thank you for handing the host position over to me for an episode. I really enjoyed listening to your expert answers to this topic.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in and hearing from your neighbors with disabilities. Check out next month's podcast for a new guest and topic. I am Emily, host of Expert Tips by ADEC Self-Advocates. See you next month.